Howdy folks, Max Caveman here, bringing you to my road to the Pokemon 2024 World Championships. Uh, in this video, I will be discussing my events for the month of January 2024. In this month, I had 4 events that I attended that were all challenges. Luckily, I wasn't able to attend them all. I did all the challenges. I did miss a cup, which I feel like is going to be pretty big going forward. So chances are, because I didn't attend the cup, that a world championship invite is highly unlikely. I still have I've got two cups coming up in February, so hopefully I will be able to attend both of those and get some more points. But for the month of January, for my first event, I wanted to try and bring back an old deck that I was playing. It has potential, but I didn't bother looking up what the more recent lists might be running because it is sort of a more unique case where it's not going to see that much play. I was playing Jumpluff, so that's a Rapid Strike deck. I thought it could do well with the rise of the Dark Charizard, so that's the main reason I played it. At this tournament, it was 5 rounds of best of 3. Round 1, I lost 2-0. Sorry, I went 0-2 with a loss against Miraidon. There are a lot of things that just hit faster, especially in Miraidon, where you can power up a Iron Hands in a couple of turns. And you can take 2 prizes on what should be a single prize deck. So didn't really help there. Just what I've realized over this event is that deck is so past its prime, especially in the build that I was doing, attacking all Pokemon. Simply just slapping a Manaphy on the bench just ends the deck. But I continued with round 2. I went against a Chien-Pao with Baxcalibur, and it's the same thing. Especially with Chien-Pao, you can potentially attack with the Manaphy. It's not worth it, but just the water types just went over it, and just really struggled. There was no Manaphy in my list, so they were able to use Radiant Greninja to just take 2 knockouts, just will away everything, because the Jumpluff only has 90 HP, so a stage 2 can just easily be taken out by the Radiant Greninja, which is what happened. Round 3, I ended up facing off against a junior, got paired all the way down. I ended up having a tie against a Dark Charizard deck. Now, this was the deck that I thought I was going to see more of. Sadly, I didn't. So I ended up pushing. I think the round 3 was just about to start, or we just ended game 2 as about time was called, so we just ended up calling it a tie. So moving on to round 4, I got a win here. I went 1-0. Now my opponent scooped towards the end of game 1, and they're just like, I cannot play out of this, and they were playing the Reggie box. Now I don't know the best way to describe it. It's just so all the regular Reggie Pokemon. The idea is to just power them up with Regigigas. I didn't really get to see the deck work as intended, and my opponent decided he just didn't want to deal with it, so ends up just fully scooping out of the game, giving me a win. And round 5, I went 0-2 loss against Lost Box. Just too hyper consistent of a deck to potentially deal with. And if I believe they were running both Manaphy and Jirachi in that list, so I I had nothing. So ends up not coming last, which was interesting. I ended up placing 16th out of 18 players. Definitely not the best choice of a deck. I thought it would be good, but after this event, a couple days later, on the 9th of January, I decided I'm going to focus on one deck until Worlds. Maybe even the next cycle afterwards, but I want to basically do like like Vance Kelly, the winner of the 2023 Worlds. He chose to play a specific deck for the entire season, that being Fusion Strike Mu. So I'm going to start bunkering down with this one strategy, and hopefully it does work out for me. But with this event, we hit top 8 points available. So there was 27 players in this event. So let's see how we go. Round 1, I got a bye. I rocked up to this event, new store, never been there before, so I was like, I kind of need to make sure I get there early. I ended up rocking up 2 hours early, and then end up with the round 1 bye. I was a bit disappointed at that point, but it's a free win, so what can you say about that? And this is a best of 1 event. Round 2, I went 1-0 against a Baxcalibur Toolbox. Now, this is one of the most interesting decks that I've seen. It is basically just relying on Baxcalibur's Super Cold to get energy onto your water Pokemon. I was fully expecting to see a Chien-Pao come down to deal with some of the more higher HP Pokemon, but it didn't, and I was playing Gholdengo here. So Gholdengo is the deck that I am trying to run with, and hitting into some of the water Pokemon with weakness, it was just such a good thing that it just sort of worked out for me. Round 3, I ended up getting a loss here against a Chien-Pao with Baxcalibur list. I normally know what to do for this deck. It's just my opponent got the cards fast enough. I believe this was the last event that I wasn't running a Manaphy in my list. So they were able to use Radiant Greninja to take out my Gimmighouls or my Hisuian Basculins in my list. So they got a couple early knockouts that really just set me back, and then I couldn't deal with it. So round 4, this is my first time facing off against this deck. I faced off against Snorlax Stall, and I ultimately scooped the game. Snorlax Stall is a quite of a difficult matchup for my deck. Even now, I still only run 1 switch in the deck, and I used it quite early, and I had no way to get it back, and I didn't run any water energy, so I ended up getting stuck with a Lumineon V in the active and no way to attack with it. So ultimately I was digging. I needed a search card just to confirm what my options were. My best bet was to wait the timeout and get a tie, but ultimately I would have decked out faster than time was called, so ultimately I just scooped. So I know now I have changed the deck up since then, putting in some water energies so I can attack with the Luminion if need be. So that is something that has changed with it. So going into round 5, I faced off against a DTE Fusion Strike or Mute VMAX deck. This my opponent in the last round is a newer player, so they haven't had as much experience as most Fusion Strike players that I have faced in the past. So ultimately, I did walk away with the win. Very close. Well, I say very close. I ended up going. Um, I just kept on trying to combo through it. Ends up with the 600. I end up getting all energies in my hands to do a Make It Rain for over 600 damage. So I was a bit happy with that, but there's a bit of a push um, towards the end because they were just starting to tick over and get everything they needed. Could have easily swung it back. So at this event, top 8 points on the line, 27 players. I placed 9th. That really sucked. And I knew that it was a potential bubble in situation. So I was really sweating the points. The 8th place, I believe she was always also playing Golden Go. She was playing a Palkia V Star version. Um, she ended up bubbling in. We had the same results, so that was a bit interesting. That I lost to Resistance. So what can you say? It is what it is. But it did prove to me that I can make it there with the points. So hopefully next time something like that happens, I can get it. But now we're going to skip past the cup that I missed. We're going to the 22nd of January for another challenge here. This is another best of one. We had 22 players in total, so top 8 points were on the line again. Now, round 1. Again, I am still playing Golden Go at this time, and I have added in the Manaphy, and I've put some Water Energies back into the deck, just so I can use Radiant Greninja and the Luminion's attacks. Round 1, I got a loss against Chien Hands. So this is the Chien-Pao list that runs the Iron Hands EX. Brutal matchup. Like, I should be able to win this fairly simply. It does come down to the Chen wherever the Iron Hands actually is. Because Iron Hands is a one-of, and you are reliant on usually 1, maybe 2 lightning energies. So I could have seen some serious. I had a serious chance of winning this because there are multiple cards that are very difficult to get. Yeah, obviously I end up losing. So it was fairly decent. So I knew what I needed to do for that next time. But round 2, I ended up facing off against a Miraidon Hands list. So this is the Miraidon with the Iron Hands. So you just fill your bench, and then you try and use Electric Generator as best you can to get the energies onto the Iron Hands. But this had a bit of a twist to it. This was with Glimmora EX. So I was thrown off at first because my opponent started with the Glimmet in the active as their basic, and then had the Glimmora on the bench in the active. So I only had a small bench to start off the game. I end up coming back with the win, so that was good. but it just threw me for a loop with the Glamora. But what I've realized with my deck is that it needs 4 turns really, and then I can generally just see everything I need in a row. So I was able to do that and walk away with the win. Round 3, we had a Miraidon player. Now I just put Miraidon down, so I guess it's most likely Miraidon hands, but I couldn't really tell. I end up just getting the win super early, so um, Miraidon is one of my more comfortable matchups to play against now, so I knew what I was doing and I took the necessary knockouts. So with that win, I move into round 4 against an Aegislash and Gholdengo deck. This is interesting. I will note that even though I was 2-1 at this point, I end up facing off against a junior. Because there were only 3 juniors at this event, so one of the masters would get paired with the junior. So I end up facing off against a junior here. End up walking away with the win. I don't want to say it was lack of experience playing, but I think that's kind of what it was that ultimately led to me getting the win. Just having the knowledge of how my deck works and how certain things work on my opponent's side just worked out for me in the end. I do run a Technical Machine Devolution in my deck, so using that on a candy target is just, it's coming common knowledge for me now. So that came up, and then I just deal with the small bodies until the big 2 prizes come out. So with that win, we go into round 5, and I'm facing off against a Gardevoir deck. Now this Gardevoir deck was running Mewtwo v Union. Very interesting matchup. My opponent was running the Peonia, running Peonia in it, so they were able to get some of the pieces they were missing from prizes. They knew that there was at least one more piece prized. And ultimately, if they didn't realize that they needed to take specific cards, instead of just instinctively grabbing one side of the prizes, I could have come back with the win. But they ended up getting the Mewtwo v Union out after using refinement to discard everything. So that just got powered up super fast with the Gardevoir's Psychic Embrace, and then just dealt all the damage it needed to wherever. So ultimately, I end up with the loss there. So I end up going 3-2 at this event. Very good record. And I placed, out of 22 players, 9th. I bubbled out again. There were a lot of players on 3-2, and resistance was big. Sadly, just didn't work out for me. Now we are moving on to the 28th of January, another challenge here. Now this event is a bit different than most of the challenges that we have gone to in the past, because the following week, so the 3rd and 4th of February, was the Melbourne Regional Championships, and as a West Australian player, a lot of the locals were going over to Melbourne to potentially get points at a regionals, which a lot of people do need to potentially get a Worlds invite. Now, because of that, a lot of people were playing the exact same decks that they are taking or did take over to Melbourne. So it was a lot more competitive than normal. Usually there's a little bit of difference in lists, but this is exactly what they knew they were taking over. So they wanted some last minute practice in. So we have 5 rounds here, best of 3. So that's good. Round 1, we went 0-2 against a Lost Zone Giratina deck. Now, ultimately, this is a difficult matchup for me because the Lost Tina list that I was facing in particular was running, I believe, 4 Path of Peaks. And so they simply put the path out and stalled me out, because my deck is heavily reliant on Path of Peak not being out, so I can use concealed cards and coin bonus to draw. On average, I draw an additional 5 cards per turn, and with the Path of Peak out, I couldn't do that. So it did just completely stall my push, so I had to rely on top decks mostly to deal with my opponent's Pokemon. Round 2, we ended up facing off against a Miraidon player. Now, this event was actually pretty stacked with Miraidons, so facing off against one is not too uncommon. I end up walking away with a 2-0 victory here. So this deck wasn't necessarily running the Peony. I can't remember now. Because I faced off against a few of the decks. Can't remember the exact version this player was running, but definitely going for the. Oh wait, no, they went for the electric generator and kept on missing enough to use the Iron Hands. That's what, right. So luckily for me, they did whiff on the electric generators. So ultimately, I didn't have to deal with a lot of powered up mons very consistently. So that's a 2-0 win. Going into round 3, I got another 2-0 win against Miraidon. So this Miraidon player is the player that was playing the Chen hands at the previous challenge. Very interesting enough, they seem to have been having deck crisis recently. They've just been switching between decks and not using one long enough to get super comfortable with it, which is very strange going into a regional series like season like this. So I believe they end up dropping after this event because they were like 0-3. But they were playing the Peony version of Miraidon. So you pitch your hands, get rid of all your cards, and then you get ideally two electric generators. They activate Peony a couple times and got the electric generators and then some like escape ropes and stuff to manipulate the board to their best of their abilities. Ultimately, it didn't work out for them that well, so they ended up not getting enough energies to be swinging with Iron Hands for knockouts. So ultimately, I end up walking away with the win. Round 4, we were facing off against a Gardevoir Screamtail, and I hated this match. Now, I know how to face off against Gardevoir Screamtail. I have faced it multiple times now. It is one of the most annoying decks for me to face because it can come out of nowhere and take a random knockout on the bench and just throw me for a loop. the reason I hated this game so much is I milled every time I used Pokestop. I did not hit item cards. And I think I used Pokestop like 6 turns in a row in one game and got maybe one item. So I was discarding all my necessary Pokemon, my necessary supporters, and I ultimately needed to use Power Pad to put the necessary supporters back in just to try and draw them again with the coin bonus or um, the concealed cards. But ultimately, because of the Pokestop, it ultimately worked against me, and I couldn't get the cards I needed to really play through the game. Um, it was a bit funny at the time, just like, cool, I'm MILF3. But it just hurt badly just saying that in both games too. So it's not just one game where I was just discarding everything off of Pokestop. It was both games. So ultimately, I did lose that game simply because of Pokestop. It feels like at the time that's why I lost. So at this point, I know I need a win to potentially make top 4 points. Now, there was only 19 players, so we didn't get top 8. So I end up facing off against another Miraidon player at this point, and I feel super confident knowing it's Miraidon, and my opponent and people who um, were talking to my opponent just before the game started said he was completely like frazzled and couldn't focus on the game enough. So they are heavily reliant on the Peony build of Miraidon, and I swear every time they use an electric generator, they got 2 energies, and at one stage, it did not matter what Pokemon I knocked out, they were taking a knockout on the next turn. Well, everything had enough energies on it. There was the right tool cards needed when possible, and they got that both games. They were hyper consistent with their deck, and they got everything fully powered up. So that definitely threw me for a loop. Having faced off against Miraidon early in the day, and they're not getting it. They didn't get enough, but now suddenly I was facing off a Miraidon that got everything it needed. So ultimately, out of 19 players, I got 12th. I said to some of my mates that go to locals and that sort of stuff, I feel like I got 12th just because I end up going 2-3, so definitely on the mid area. But because I knew that this was the last big chance that a lot of players were having before going over east to participate in a regionals, it was going to be more difficult. So ultimately, for the month of January 2024, I end up walking away with 0 points yet again. So for February, we actually have a pretty stacked month. I believe there are 2 cups in February coming up. I need to refine my Golden Go list because before the Perth Regionals, which is my local regional championships, we will have rotation. So Temporal Forces will be released, so I am looking forward to that. But because it's a bit too early to really change the deck to get ready for Temporal Forces, we need to get through the Paldean Fates format, which there isn't really much that can change up my deck. I know there are variants of Gholdengo now that are running Nemona with Nemona's backpack. I have been testing that on live a little bit, but ultimately, I just want to get at least a couple of points now, because soon we're going to have a lot of players trying to refine points, getting those first and seconds rather than a top four, and there are actually quite a few that already are doing that. So the difficulty is going to start to rise with the challenges and cups. So hopefully I have some luck. Hopefully you liked my breakdown of the January events. I'll see you all next time. See ya.